Welcome guys to our first video on Ray Bradbury's short story The Veldt, which is your second short story in this sci-fi dystopian fiction short story unit. So you're all already experts really on Ray Bradbury if you're taking this particular online version of the course, because we did Fahrenheit 451 first in this case. Sometimes I don't do the novel first, but for this video, that's where we're at. And I just wanted to give some context and introduction before we go and dive into the story itself. So important to remember our author, right? And we want to think about like the author in terms of context. And as we know, we're dealing with the kind of social context, we would say, of the 1950s, and we'll include the 1960s as well. So the kind of cultural context that we're thinking about as we kind of think about the historical cultural context of the 1960s. One of the major technological inventions was this guy. Alright, we'll make a little, and there we go. There's our little TV, right? Television. Television was a relatively new invention that gave the ability to have mass media. Okay, so the connected key aspect was mass media. And as we saw in Fahrenheit 451 rather clearly with the character of Mildred, obviously, Ray Bradbury is a concern for the effect or let's say impact also of technology on family. And not just on family, but on relationships as well. Could be more than just family relationships, but so technology as a form of mass media and a rising family activity of entertainment. Family activity and like social entertainment. So we want to think about what's his social commentary. In this case, the author, through the story, is going to make a social commentary on this whole issue of TV, of how does mass media affect families and individuals, how does it affect our way of thinking, our way of interacting. And not just that, but what's the effect on children and young adults of this form of media. So couple things. The medium. Okay. This is the type of media. Okay, so there are different mediums that communicate. This type of media is a medium. So medium could be, TV, or it could be radio, or it could be web in our case, modern case. Of course, this story is before the internet. And remember, we are wondering, what if kind of ... Okay, what if this happens in the future, or if this continues? If you read the introduction to your Fahrenheit 451 novel by Neil Gaiman, he mentions, these are questions that all science fiction is asking, like, what if this is going to happen? What if this continues? So it's about trends, right? In the immediate context of the author. He's going to be looking at trends in his own society, but warning us about the future through sci-fi, dystopian. Okay, so we've got the historical context. Now we have an immediate context inside of the story itself. Okay, so if we think about the immediate internal context in the story, we have a family and we have a futuristic home. And if we think back to what we talked about in other videos in terms of utopia, which in a way we kind of translate the word utopia to mean a perfect place. That's what we mean when we use the word utopia, and we put that in quotation marks because there is no perfect place, because the literal meaning is no place, like it actually doesn't exist. So technically, this family home is supposed to be a mini utopia. It's called Happy Life Home. But what is Ray Bradbury going to be warning us about using technology to supposedly create the perfect place? Perfect home, perfect social conditions, perfect situation for children, whatever. Okay? And remembering his social commentary is going to be directly connected back to the TV situation. Okay, how's this affecting families? And what's the beginning of this kind of technology? Where could it go? Okay, so that gives us some, framework to read the story in. I want to give you a quote, a famous quote. Before I get to the title, I need some space up here, so I want to give you a famous quote about media by a guy named Marshall McLuhan. Okay, Marshall McLuhan actually was at the University of Toronto, and he was like a media and communications professor, very famous in the 1960s. That's an L here, sorry. So Marshall McLuhan, famous kind of theorist and professor at U of T, and he thought a lot about media and the impact of media and different kinds of mediums, different types of media, different ways of communicating. Okay, and he had this saying, the medium is the message. So the medium is the message. What's he saying here? He's saying the mode of communication, okay, the type of media, the mode of communication, like how are you actually communicating? Are you communicating through a painting? Are you communicating through a movie? Are you on the radio? Are you writing an article? Are you printing a book? What's your mode of communication? That's the how. The medium is the message. So the message would be like the content. This is what is said. The medium is how it's said, right? It's the mode of communication. So the medium is the message. What he's trying to say is technology is making it so that people think less about what is being said because they're more influenced by how it's said through that medium. And he gives a famous example, okay? There was a presidential debate. It was put on the radio and on TV. And that debate was between two people. It was through JFK, John F. Kennedy, and Richard Nixon. Okay, now if you just go and look up pictures of these two guys, JFK is a pretty handsome, normal-looking guy. He dresses nicely. He speaks very well. He's very composed, and he's, quite good at public speaking. Whereas Richard Nixon is kind of not as handsome, a little bit ugly, a little bit awkward. He has some awkward mannerisms, awkward style of speaking. Okay? So Marshall McLuhan gives this famous example. There's a debate between JFK and Richard Nixon. If you listened on the radio, everyone who listened on the radio almost said, for sure, Richard Nixon, he's the winner of the debate. So you're just listening, you can't see them on the screen. And most people, the majority of people are like, oh yeah, no question, Nixon, he won. I heard it on the radio. But everyone who actually listened on TV, watched the program, they were like, oh yeah, no comparison, JFK destroyed him. JFK for the win, easily. So why? What happened here? Why would one person think Nixon clearly won, and another person think JFK won? It's because of the medium. Nixon didn't work very well on TV, JFK did. Okay, so we're going to connect this to the story that we become like the media that we watch. We become like it. We are changed by it. We start to mirror it. We start to become like Netflix or like Instagram or Facebook. It starts to change us. Okay? So next video we'll get into the title and into the story.